Hi, this is David Odell with OdellCompleteConcrete. Today we're going to remove this patio and put some new concrete in. This is our first day on the job. We're going to cut those trees back. They're overgrown from the other side of the wall. We're also going to take that ivy off the property line wall. We're going to remove this shed. It's seen better days. It's got some dry rot and some termite damage. So that's coming out. Some of these sections of concrete have been removed, and what happened, the reason those sections of concrete were removed, because apparently there was a massive tree in this backyard at one point, and it raised the concrete up so drastically that it was a real step hazard, walking hazard. So they had just knocked out some of the sections of concrete that were raised way up. And I'm just looking inside this shed to see what's in it and how we're going to demo the thing. This concrete was originally put in with dividers of 2x4 redwood, which was real popular about 40 years ago. What happened with this, because there was no rebar or anything tying these sections of concrete together, so once the trees started growing, they went into those gaps where the 2x4s used to be, and the roots filled those up solid and wedged those slabs in real nice and tight. The concrete came out real easy. Just had it was just like 4 inches deep. Had no reinforcement of any kind in it. So you don't need a lot of stuff to remove concrete like this. You just need a 20-pound sledgehammer and a pry bar, and you can pretty much get it out of there. Although I used my 60-pound electric jackhammer, also used the 20-pound sludge when needed. And we found this little structure here that was kind of coming apart, so we just demoed it and got rid of it. All that ivy's coming off the wall. Surprisingly, those ivy that are on that wall, that particular type, has a heck of a root system that really gets pretty dense, and it spreads out pretty far. You can see how this concrete is prying up relatively easy because they're in sections and there's nothing holding them together. The only thing holding these in place is the ground. And once the roots got under it, then that wasn't doing its job anymore. When I first got to this job, I wasn't aware that there was a massive tree on this particular property. So once I started taking out these sections of concrete and moving some of the debris around, I was able to locate pretty massive stump, about a 3.5 foot diameter stump that had been futilely attempted by somebody stump grinding it and didn't do much to it. So I had to get in there, knock out a bunch of the roots. I had to get a stump grinder, grind the roots down and the stump to get it below grade. I got it down about 6 inches below the top of concrete, but that's about all I could do. I mean, this tree, because I went to Google Maps just to check it out to see what I was actually dealing with and how big this monster was. And what I found, that this tree actually went over the neighbor's house, half of it, and also went over half of the actual house that we're working on. So it covered this whole backyard, basically. The canopy of the tree. And now this shed here had a lot of stuff in it, as you can see there. So I'm going to throw that in the dumpster, get rid of it all. I was able to salvage a couple things out of there. I think I got a little step stool that I found that came in kind of handy. What else did I find in there that I could actually use? There might have been a couple other odds and ends, but in any case, I came up with this formula to drop this thing. I stuck my Sawzall into the roof right at the peak, and I just cut it all the way around, and then I was able to just flip it over and break it open like a peanut, basically. You can see the floor is not in real good shape. It had been moved more than one time, I would say, from the looks of the damage to that metal base that it was setting on. So it was all twisted, dented. It was rotting. Had some termites in the door. It was due to come down. I was on some of the comments I've been getting from a lot of people that watch the videos that I'm doing. They were asking about getting some of these shirts, some of the stuff that we all wear on the jobs. So what I did is I ordered some shirts, and now that they've came in, I've added on my actual website, OdellCompleteConcrete.com. I added a button, and it says My Store on it. It's on the first opening page. You just click that button that says My Store, and then if you want to get any of these shirts, you can. I also added a green shirt to the gray and blue, and I put some long sleeves in there. And also I have some baseball caps. I've got 3 colors of those, and I've got some stylus pins, ink pins, which are going to come in handy in the future probably for you, especially if you're starting to wear these shirts. Because what happened the other day, I was at one of my local building supply hardwares, and someone actually stopped me and recognized me and my son because we were wearing the shirts. They recognized us from the YouTube channel, and they were picking up some supplies, husband and wife team, picking up some materials and taking it home, and they're trying to set a few odds in and some stepping stones and what have you. And I guess they learned a few things on this video. Anyway, back to the job. Here's where that stump was. It was covered with a bunch of broken rocks and debris, so that's why I could never see the thing until I actually started probing around with a pickaxe and getting all that other trash off the top. And once we exposed it, I dropped in the stump grinder. A lot of the big roots that were all over the yard, we were able to just dig around the roots, and then I cut them with the Sawzall, and I pried them up with a pry bar and popped them out like a bad tooth. You can see the wall damage this tree did right there. I actually dug down along the side of these footings just to see if the roots were down there. They actually go underneath the block wall footing, and it actually started to raise the wall up. It probably raised it a good 4 inches in this corner here, and it split it wide open. So needless to say, I can't pour concrete against the wall now because the footing is higher than the floor of the house. So I have to put a little bit of a planter bed in there. You can fill it with gravel. You could put something in there that has doesn't have a lot of roots. You can put in there as decorative wall covering or something like that. Or you can just throw gravel in there, do zero maintenance, and just let the water run off into the planter. And this planter goes all the way around to the front where it's real low, and that's where the water would come out and go out to the street. Right now, we've been probing around for the last 3 or 4 hours in this backyard, trying to find as many roots as possible. Because whenever you have an area like this, you want to get as many of the roots you can, get them out of there. Because what happens if you don't get them out, they decompose, and then you end up with a lot of hollow spots under the concrete. Now, ideally, it'd be nice to go down about 2 feet and get everything out and then bring in some new soil. But nobody wants to go to that expense. So what we're going to do is just get out what we can. We're going to get all the chippings out from the stump grinder, and then what I'll do is I'll reinforce the concrete just in case there is some leftover debris in the dirt that decomposes. With the design of concrete, the rebar, the fiber, I will be able to bridge any defects in the subgrade. Well, that's the easy way, inexpensive way to take care of some dirt issues. Just upgrade your concrete, put some steel in there, and you're good to go. I'm going to be using a 3000 psi. I'm going to use 3/8 rebar on 2-foot centers and fiber mesh reinforcement mixed into the concrete. What the rebar does, I mean, it doesn't really prevent the concrete from cracking, but what it does do is when the concrete does crack, it's not going to shift or separate or heave. That's the rebar holds it tight together. Now the fiber mesh does a whole different thing, and what that does is it prevents shrinkage cracks. So between the two things, you end up with a really good product. Now, if anybody wants to know a little bit more about my background, how I got started, I just did my story on LA Magazine. It's LA Voyager Magazine. It's through the LA Times. I think they publish it probably once a month, or maybe it goes out weekly. I'm not real sure. But anyway, it's going to have a little bit about my story in there. It's going to have some photos and stuff. It might be kind of interesting. So now we're checking the grade here. My elevation is always starts at the house, and you want to be 2 inches below your floor level. A lot of people confuse that with 2 inches below the weepscrete, when actually it's 2 inches below the floor level is actual code. So that's actually only a ½ inch below the weepscrete, and now you're 2 inches, because the weepscrete drops down 1.5 inches below the floor level right out the gate. Then you need a ½ inch under that, and you got your 2 inches. Here's the level, so we're showing some slope out towards the front. These are my screed boards that I'm going to be using to level the concrete off. I'm going to snap a red chalk line underneath the weepscrete just to give my pumper an idea of the level he's got to put it into. I actually don't need it myself, because I can just eyeball a ½ inch under the weepscrete, and that's all I need to do. But I like to make this as easy as possible for everybody. Now here's the 2x4 we're going to rod the dirt off with, and that's going to get a nice flat grade. On my screed pins that hold up that 2x4 in the middle there, it's just a wood stake with a 16 duplex through it at elevation, and I set the 2x4 on top of that. Real simple, foolproof system. They have some other pins that you can buy and use. A lot of times they don't work that well though. Like the spring loaded ones will end up slipping down on you when you least expect it. And the screw down ones, the concrete gets in those threads after a while. They don't work that well, so this always works every time without anything, any defective parts. Now, right here at the entry, we have a little bit of a ramp up going through this side gate. This could be ideal for an RV parking, or just to bring your cars around the back to detail them, wash them, or whatever, or bring anything into the backyard, because it has a wide gate. And this is the side yard, and it's a corner lot, so it's perfect for that kind of stuff. And this entry has a little ramp similar to an apron approach going up a driveway from the street. It has that slope on it. Well, we have the same thing right here off of the sidewalk. A little break point that will slope back about 6 feet, and then we get up to the patio level. So we soaked this down really good the day before, and then we brought in the plate compactor. If you try to wet them the same day on some of these soils out here where we are, they get pretty sticky. So it's best to wet them the day before, real heavy, and let it soak in, and then run your plate the next day. Then you won't get all that sticking to the plate compactor, and it compacts real nice. Also, what I do is I wet the ground. I give it a good saturation the day before I pour the concrete. You end up with a nice base to pour the concrete on. It dries real even that way. If you do have a shaded area that you know is going to be shaded most of the day, I usually put a little less water in those areas, just so I can try to even out the dry time throughout the whole slab. It helps a little bit to do that. So I put these rebars at 2-foot centers, and they're 3/8 diameter, or also known as a number 3. We did this entire job, the removal of everything. We did everything by hand with the wheelbarrow, shovel, pick. So just real basic tools. The only thing I had that was a little tech that a lot of people don't have was the dump trailer, but a dumpster will also work for this situation. Just have a dumpster dropped off and wheel it right in there and get rid of everything. This is kind of what it looks like the day before you're ready to pour. All the forms are in place, all the grade pins are set, the steel's all tied. I have a sewer clean out that I ran into here. I had to put a collar, easy access collar on. It has a brass cap on it that's removable to get to the ABS 3-inch pipe. That has another cap on that on the inside of that collar. Here's the day of the pour. You can see the ground looks moist. That's from the heavy saturation the day before. I try to stay away from wetting it the day of the pour, because again, that dirt gets sticky on your feet, and when you're walking in the concrete with mud on your feet, you could kick up some chunks of mud into the concrete, and then what happens later on when you go to wash it down, that mud will disintegrate and the concrete will just, you have a hole in the concrete basically where the mud was off of your foot. So you don't want it sticky the day of the pour. So the subgrade's real crucial. As you can see, we're pouring it pretty deep here. It's about 5 inches deep throughout. But a lot of times I pour them deep because I'm going to go over one load anyway, no matter what. One concrete truckload. And they carry 10 yards out here. If I know I'm going to go over 10, I'm just thinking, well, as long as I don't go over two full loads, then I'll just go ahead and pour it deep, because the concrete truck's going to be here anyway. Instead of having to truck in some other materials or whatever, you just put it all on one load, make a thicker piece of concrete, a better job. My brother's here on this job. He's helping me pour it out. His name's Douglas. We've been in it for about 35 years doing concrete work. We're actually third generation, so we've been doing concrete quite a while. This happens to be in California. I've worked in Nevada, I've worked in Washington, Arizona for different companies. So I've got a good idea of different areas are definitely going to require different process of doing concrete work. That's something you can't, like this particular system and the method that I'm using may not work that well in a freezing climate. You have to do some subgrade work. You have to get a different concrete mix design. A lot of little details take into consideration when working. What you do if you're in a different area is you just call your local concrete supplier, and they'll tell you the best way to do it and what mix design you're gonna need. Now this is a funny float. They work really good on these really sloped areas like this, so you can really manage it pretty good, because you got a lot of different angles of the concrete you got to deal with. Now this is a pretty good pour here, and so I brought the power trowel in on this job because it's nice and flat. It's an ideal setup for a concrete finishing machine. We're in direct sunlight, so it's drying fast. It's a hot day. You have to anticipate, well, you either get more finishers or you get a power trowel, so those are the options. This particular power trowel has been modified. They normally come with like a 5.5 or 6 horsepower in these 3-footers. This one's got an upgraded 11.5 horse on it, and the reason they did that is they were using it for with a floating pan. It's just a big like pan that connects to the blades, and that's for getting out on really wet concrete and just kind of going over it, flattening it out. So you need a little bit more horsepower to turn that pan rather than just four thin blades. And that's why it had been modified. And the nice thing about this, all you have to do is go around the edges with your trowels, because the machine can only get within about 6 inches of the house edge. So you just trowel that edge, you do your hand edger on the other perimeter, and then the power trowel takes care of everything in the middle. There's a lot of things, a lot of finishes you can do at this point. When you have the power trowel, you can actually just do a machine rotary finish on it if you're good with the machine. That's kind of crucial to do, because you have to keep nice straight lines and you have to keep the concrete real consistent, and it's all about timing. Basically, you got to be on time all the time when you're dealing with concrete. In this particular case, we're going to just machine it. We're going to drag a broom behind it to get a non-slip finish. I'm not going to put any joints in this. It's really hard access to run any kind of walking tools in here, so there's no joints going in. I'm going to saw cut them in the next day. I'm going to put some concrete cure on here. I'm going to get up on the roof of the house, spray it down from up there, and then I'm going to walk around the planter bed and spray it from in there so I can get the whole thing with some concrete cure. And that's kind of crucial, especially when you're not wet joining, because what can happen when you come back the next day if you don't do that concrete cure, it could be already cracked up. You can get a lot of shrinkage cracks and stuff like that. So you put the concrete cure on there, you can come back the next day and cut it. When I came back to cut this, I was anticipating a possible crack starting off of that fireplace, but when I got here in the morning, you know, there was no crack starting anywhere. So I got real lucky, and so I was able to cut it up exactly where I wanted to, and these things will be good to go for 50-60 years easy. I think the fiber mesh helps me out too on the day after saw cutting, because that prevents your shrinkage cracks as well. Anyway, check out my website if you want any of the shirts or hats or pins. And also, I don't know when that magazine's going to come out, LA Times, Voyager, but I've already got the article written up for them, and they're going to be publishing it probably within the next 2 weeks, I would say, maybe sooner or maybe later. But I'll keep you updated when it definitely is published. And that's going to have a little background on me. Here's what it looks like after you saw cut it up and wash it down. I got my cuts at about 10-foot centers, both directions. The water's draining off real nice. So if you have any questions or comments, or you want to ask me anything, just call me or email me and I'll get back to you. Thank you. Bye.